So, Greg, I heard you like machines.
Big machines, small machines, fast machines, tough machines. Like, give me like a good mech, and I'm in heaven. I mean, like, Mech Warrior. I spent tons of time with, like, as a kid. Just like, like a great, like, tabletop role playing game.
How about a mech that runs on methane made out of a pickup truck?
It's one of my favorite characters in the game, actually, because he's such an oddball.
You're listening to PlayStation Power. What are we talking about, Greg?
We're talking about the great and I think underrated, honestly.
I would agree with you on that.
First game in the series to be released in the West, Front Mission 3, released by the well-known company Squaresoft back in 1999.
Yes. Now, before we go crazy on this, we should just get some vital stats out here. So, this game was released in Japan on September 2nd, 1999. It came to North America February 29th, 2000, and Europe got it August 11th, 2000. Now, this was actually released on the PlayStation Network, and that is how I played it. Japan got it March 24th, 2009. The PAL region got it September 1st, 2010. And North America got it the latest, which was weird, with December 21st, 2010. As you said before, this was made and published by Square, but the specific developer for this game was actually Square Product Development Division 6.
Yes. Formerly known as G-Logic, which was a...
I did not know that.
Yeah,
okay.
the original game, well, we'll get into it here in a moment, but the Front Mission series goes all the way back to the Front Mission series was started in 1995 when the first game came out with the Super Famicom in Japan, and G-Logic was part of Square at the time, but they've since been absorbed into Square and been renamed, like you just said.
Oh, okay. Wow. Some knowledge you got there.
Well, I am a huge fan of the series because of this game. Front Mission 3 was one of those games that you really don't expect much out of when you first get, but then you just like fall in love with it. This was a bargain bin buy for me about a year after it came out. I think I paid like $25 for it.
I wouldn't really say that's a bargain bin price. But
it was it was $50 when it came out new.
Right.
I mean, $40-$50. So, and it was new copy, which if you know anything about game stores, it's kind of nice to find a new copy for that price, especially when all the practices about trying to recycle used games and new and blah blah blah. So, but anyway,
yeah, I guess.
I picked this game up mostly because, I was a big fan of Square, and I'm also a big fan of tactical role playing games, which is what this is. So we were talking about off mic how how the closest comparison I can make to this game is to the XCOM games. Which came up to the computer back in the 90s, and this game has a lot of similarities to that. So seeing this and reading the back of the box, I'm like, gee, this sounds a lot like an XCOM, except just with like mechs instead. So I picked it up on a whim and fell in love with the game, and I've been a big fan of the series since then.
Yeah, it's kind of like that to a point. I found this maybe like a year or two ago, actually, on the PlayStation Network, so I don't really have a history with this game at all, but I did really enjoy this game. This is I don't like one specific type of game. I just like a lot of different kinds of games, and this game interested me. Sometimes I don't really fall for these kinds of games, but this game did it pretty well.
It warms the cockles of my heart that this game is available on the PSN, because, like I said, this game did not get a huge reception here in the West. This series has always been much more popular, much more popular in Japan than has been in the West. So,
yeah.
To give you a great example, altogether in the series, there have been 11 games released in the series. Only 4 of those have come out in the West. and only 2 of those were released in Europe. So this is kind of a weird series in the sense that there's the main series and there's a spin-off series. So you've got the main series, which is the main series to which up to 5. You had Front Mission, which came out with Super Famicom in 1995. Front Mission 2, which was PlayStation in 97. This game, Front Mission 3 in 99. Front Mission 4, which was a PS2 game, 2003, and then Front Mission 5, Scars of the War, which was also PS2 in 2005. But only 3 and 4 were released in the West. And then you also had the spin-off games, which is like Gun Hazard, Alternative, First, 2089, 2092, and Border of Madness.
I never even heard of these games.
They're spin-off games. That's because, like I said, most of these did not come out in the West.
Oh, okay.
The only games, the only games that came out in the West were Front Mission 3, Front Mission 4, the remake of Front Mission, which is available on the DS, and the newest game in the series, 2010, Front Mission Evolved, which is a first-person shooter.
That was 2000. Wow, that was 6 years ago, basically.
Yeah. The series is dormant. It is dormant right now. Square hasn't said what they're doing definitively with the series, but
the thing is, they turned it into more of an action game and not a turn-based role-playing game.
That's why I said the main series of games has always stayed tried and true to the tactical role-playing formula. The spin-off games have gone. They've gone in all different directions.
Right.
So, in Japan, this sparked a manga, a cartoon, a movie, toys, books, music, a whole bunch of stuff. It really turned into a huge phenomenon like over there.
No, it's crazy. I did not know anything about that.
But Front Mission 3 was a lot of people like I said, first exposure to this series because that was the first game that came out in the West, and it did well enough for the sequel, Front Mission 4, to get released several years later. But since then, most of the games, like I say, in Japan, unfortunately. So, and this is also interesting to me also because this is the time period. In the late 90s, early 2000s, during the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era, when Square was trying to diversify themselves. They didn't want to be just known as a role-playing company. They wanted to also make other games too, and see if they couldn't get some of those other games to kind of become major hits. You had games like Einhander, which was a space-based shooter, also for the PlayStation. You had the Bouncer, which was a very interesting, weird,
I know about that game.
kind of interactive / brawler game, which is also for the PlayStation.
But people really didn't like that game.
It was okay. It had its flaws. I mean, it's worth a playthrough. I wouldn't say it's a great game, but
yeah, I've always been interested in playing that game.
They also had a more pure Street Fighter-ish kind of game with like the Bushido Blade games, and then you also had action RPG games like Vagrant Story, and just they were really trying to diversify themselves and really trying to kind of branch out into different areas and different genres.
Oh man, that's a deep game. I actually own that physically.
Oh, which one? Vagrant Story?
Vagrant Story.
Yes, it is very deep.
Oh
my
god.
You got to be prepared to spend a lot of time if you want to go through that game. But
it takes forever to save. Oh my god.
But
it's a cool game though.
Yeah. So in Japan, at least, the Front Mission series was probably Square's biggest non-RPG franchise before they merged with Enix and gained access to that company's rich library of games.
Oh, yeah, no, Enix has a lot of awesome stuff.
But so you, Flex, what made you pick this game up on the PSN recently, George?
I really don't know. I just saw the cover and just read the summary. It sounded really cool, and I really trust Square around this era.
Yes.
So it was, I forget how much it was, but I believe it was really cheap. So I picked it up, and then I started playing it on my PS3, and then I moved it over to my Vita, and I don't know what happened to the save. I wasn't far at all, so but I had to redo it all, so it wasn't even like an hour I played or something like that. So,
well, this is definitely a case once again where like one of us is a lot more familiar with the game, than the other person is. But
wait till we get to some of the wrestling games.
Yes, the shoe would be another foot there, like for sure. But,
yes.
But yeah. A lot of people, myself included, consider this time period, the late '90s or the early 2000s, to be like Square's pinnacle as far as their genius in towns, with a lot of the games that they came up with during this time period. And Prohibition 3 reviewed very well here in the West. It just didn't get like great sales, just because of the time period that it came out in, I think. Just to give an example, GameSpot gave it an 8.3 out of 10. IGN gave it like an 8.8 out of 10. So those are pretty good ratings.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
But anybody who likes mechs, and really, who doesn't like a massive 100-ton war machine that you can like equip with like 3 different kind of weapons and it's like rain depth instruction, it's like down upon your enemies, really would like this game. And
the same people who are not good people.
But like we said earlier, this is a tactical role-playing game in the sense that basically the game's divided in 2 phases. You have your battle phase and you have your story phase. The battle phase, you're controlling a team of mechs and you're moving them around on a map, and you're turn-based. You take turns moving around your mech, making attacks like your unit. Trying to do things like seek cover, heal damage, support somebody else, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's kind of like half, it's kind of like strategy RPG, and like half visual novel, even though there's almost no visual part to it.
The gameplay reminds me strongly, like I said earlier, like the XCOM games. It also reminds me, to make another reference to another Square PlayStation game, there are aspects of Final Fantasy Tactics in this also, as far as the gameplay goes.
Yes, I really felt that. There are things that weren't even explained to me that I'm still trying to figure out. There are so many mechanics to this game.
So, during the battle phase, like your team goes, like the other team goes, and so on and so on. And it's like the objective is to either like win or lose the battle. You win most battles by destroying most of the enemies. There are exceptions. Certain maps, you're tasked to try to get all your units to a certain area. For example, or defend yourself like X number of turns. But the principal goal of each battle is destroy all the enemies, and you want to do that anyway because you get because your people. You have commanders who are actually piloting the mechs. They're actually inside of it. These are playable characters. They gain experience, like causing damage, and they get more experience, like if they destroy an enemy. So it's to your benefit to want to try to destroy as many enemies as possible.
Right. Also, just to throw this in here, enemies can surrender.
Yes.
And you can do what I do and just blow them up anyway. Or you could actually steal their mechs, and then you can add it to your...
Yes!
I did not know this until...
This is an awesome feature to have.
Yes, I did not know this until just a bit ago. Because I had a mech that had no arms. So I was like, well, this guy surrendered. I'm going to eject my pilot so he can actually do something. And I saw that I could actually jump onto the same square as the... surrendered enemy, and I noticed that I jumped into the mech, and I was like, oh wow. But the problem is that mech didn't have any arms either.
There are certain,
and then I added it to my less list of mechs I own.
Right.
So
there are certain tactics, because each player also has certain tactics that they can use. But there's certain tactics and there's certain weapons that will maximize your chances of being able to force an enemy's power, like an enemy's Vanzer. They're actually called Vanzers, like in the game, to eject. So you can get a healthy mech, and you can force them to eject. So, and if you can get lucky and be able to capture a certain enemy's mech early on in the game, that will give you a huge leg up. Looks like some of the battles coming up, to be able to have the powerful mech on your side.
I wish I knew that, because then I'd have at least more money. Although money isn't an issue in this game, really.
No, money's pretty good. I mean, money I always kind of felt tight, but not.
Well, you
broke.
can also.
Yeah.
Well, no, you could also just keep doing battle simulations over and over again.
Yes, you
and
can.
You get money from that.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. That's what I actually had to do.
So the other side of the game is story mode, which takes place like between the battles, and this is where the story is explained, characters like their interactions. You can also in most story modes you have access to a shop, like to a town, where you can actually go in and do things like visit a shop to do repairs and to be able to buy new weapons, like new weapons, new parts, like your mechs. There's a bar usually where you can hang out and advance the story, and find interesting characters to talk to. There's a battle simulator, like George said, and there's also a feature in the game which I really love. There's a virtual internet which you can access.
Oh man, this stuff is always awesome to see.
Yes.
Especially for a game that came out like 99, 2000.
Yes, very forward thinking. I was shocked to see this in the game personally, because I'm like, whoa, this is...
It's so crazy. Because you can go and play those .hack games are on PS2, and they have computer simulation stuff as well, where you go through computer files and stuff.
Right.
And it's always nice to see all this stuff, because it's like you see that the era it came from and like how forward thinking they would be.
Yeah.
And it's just like this is so simplistic compared to what we have now. You know, it's just like, forums. This is like when they called them like BBSs.
Well, most people were still using modems back when this game came out. So, but and this actually has a gameplay purpose too, because during this virtual internet part, you can read news stories which pertain to the plot, and also recent events that you've done. There are forums which you can browse onto to find posts. There's emails that you receive, and you can also send emails. And if you dig around, and you want to spend the time to dig into this any chance you get to and find new stuff, because there are certain items and certain characters that you can unlock by going deep enough and following the proper steps. Like for example, doing a chain of emails, or digging around and finding somebody's posts, responding to them, that kind of stuff. So it really kind of adds a new element to the game. Because not only is it flashy and fun to look at, but it also can physically reward you, like in the game itself.
Yeah, I didn't know about that really. I knew about the whole forums, and I did have characters that got emails that got passwords to certain forums, but I didn't know that I need to go through the forums and see what's going on.
So let's talk about the story and the plot, just real quick here. What I really like about this game, and which I learned in later years, is that actually all the games of the main series, of the Front Mission series, all connect to one another. They're all kind of direct sequels to one another. The locations in the world change, and the characters you're controlling change, of course, but the world and the background's the same for all these games. So there's a huge sense of connection. to everything. So like if you played Front Mission on the DS or the remake on the DS or Front Mission 4, you'll recognize people and countries and locations and like whatnot. Obviously everything does kind of take place like the same series. So this particular game is set in the year 2112, and you are playing. I'm going to butcher this Japanese name. I believe it's pronounced like like Kazuki, like your character, who is a member.
You can also change that name.
Yes, you can. Thank God for that.
Which is there really a purpose for that?
Yeah.
I didn't change it.
Yeah, but he is a citizen of the OCU, which is the which is one of the big superpowers like in this world. They control basically Japan and most of Asia and the Philippines and Australia and like that kind of stuff.
Well, the Philippines is part of Asia.
Yeah, but he is a test pilot for the Japanese Self-Defense Force Panzers. And he also has a good friend who's kind of a goofball, but he's kind of a likable character still. Who named Ryogo, who plays a pretty important part like in the game also. One of the things I love another thing I really love about this game that's really very again forward thinking for when it came out, and something that George didn't even wasn't aware of until I mentioned to him off mic. You get a choice real early in the game, within about the first 2 minutes, I'd say. There are choices that you can make in the game as you go along. Usually choices just affect which map you go to, or which battle you face or whatnot. But there's a choice you can make earlier in the game as whether or not that you want to go with Ryogo, because Ryogo needs to deliver a shipment of Panzers in a town, and he invites you to tag along. Depending upon if you say yes or no, that determines which scenario that you go down to, because the game has 2 fully fleshed out scenarios, each one having about 30-40 hours of gameplay with it. And the scenarios are all very different enough, even though it takes place in the same overarching plot. They all have different characters, maps, battles, people, everything. So you get to play the game twice, essentially, because of that. Which is again something you see more of like now these days. But when I realized it way back when, I was blown away, because this is one of the first major games I could think of that actually had that choice in it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. And when you said that to me, I was just like, that's crazy.
Well, the game doesn't make it obvious to you.
No, it doesn't acknowledge it. It's just like asking you a question. I feel like a lot of games these days don't have something like that early on in the story like this game does. And thinking that the first question ever that you get that you can answer yes or no to, and it changes the story based on it, that's crazy.
Yeah. So depending upon which choice that you make, depends if you go down the so-called DHZ scenario or the USN scenario. The DHZ and USN are also major countries, in this fictional 22nd century Earth. The DHZ is basically China, and the USN is basically North and South America. Unified. It's like one country. So if you go down the DHZ path, you get to have your adopted sister Alyssa with you, as a major character like in the game. Whereas if you go down the USN path, you work with a defected USN scientist named Emma. So, and even though you encounter other characters, the same characters in both scenarios, what scenario path you pick depends upon who you actually have in your party versus
who are your enemies.
Right. Yes. Who you interact with, and you also get totally different endings depending upon which scenario that you go on. Also, with one scenario being a lot more happier than the other scenario, basically. So there's so much difference between the two scenarios that that you really can't play the game twice. Just because that both things are so radically different, and for a game of this time period to be able to offer to for this time period to be able to offer that huge amount of gameplay, it's really like impressive.
Right.
So anyway, you basically have the people that you get in your party, like through one way or another, who also each person comes with a mech. You can customize the mech. You can also put them into different mechs. You can add on weapons. You can also add on like abilities. Each person does better with a certain kind of mech versus another, but you really can mix and match them as you want to.
Right.
Some mechs specialize in long distance attacks. They can get, like, for example, like missile launchers, like on the mechs, and they just like stay in the back and like rain down death like upon your enemies. Some mechs do long range attacks with things like lasers.
I didn't know lasers. I didn't know there were lasers in this game.
Some mechs can do shorter distance attacks with things like shotguns and machine guns. And
it's also melee combat.
And there's also melee combat. We can also just like go like whatever. We can literally just dash right up to an enemy and bash it. Like in the body, or to damage it heavily, or attack a leg to take out a leg. So
now, is there specific targeting you can do? Because
there is targeting you can do. Yes, depending upon the weapons and tactics. Tactics mean that each character also has skill set.
Right.
So you can combine the skill set with the weapon to specialized things. Some weapons, like a shotgun, will attack the entire mech.
Yeah.
Other weapons, you can try to aim towards certain like one part or another. You can see when you bring the cursor over to attack an enemy mech, you can see your probability of being able to hit it and the estimated damage. So you can use that.
Right.
Use that as kind of like an eyeball, trying to figure out what you want to do or not. Because you also want to be thinking about defensively as well. Because anything that you can do to your enemies will be more than glad to do to you. So you want to try to keep your weaker mechs in the back and try to also maximize cover. You have a certain amount of APs, action points, to spend each turn, so you can either move a little bit and attack, or move the whole time, not attack, or just simply attack and attack. You can do 2 attacks a turn. Of certain mechs and certain abilities.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So, as you get deeper to the game, there's a lot of there's a huge amount of gameplay options here. There's a huge amount of diversity that you can do in the mechs, the mechs that you can equip, and the weapons that you can use and that kind of stuff. And also your pilot is also a separate unit. There may be cases that your mech gets crippled and you want to have your pilot hop out and walk across the map and go pick up like another mech somewhere else.
Or you just get ejected randomly.
Right. And there's certain missions where you start off on foot and you have to race toward the mechs. I didn't
get up to that. Anything like that yet.
So and the only gun you have is the person, like the pea shooter. So like you want to get.
It still does damage though.
It does do some damage.
I shot a mech before with it,
but
it does like 2 or 3 damage.
Mechs have 5 areas: the body, the left arm, right arm, left leg, and right leg. And each part has a certain amount of armor and a certain amount of hit points.
Actually, the legs are just one entity together.
Oh yeah, it must be later games I'm thinking about that. I'm sorry, yes. But most mechs in this game are of the traditional Transformer / Voltron 2-leg walking model, but there are some 4-legged and 6-legged mechs in the game also.
I actually have a mech that hovers.
Yes, and there's hovering mechs too. So definitely want to mix and match your mechs to be able to because certain battlefield terrains will do better than others. Some battles are outside, some battles are inside bases, which are like very like close confined spaces without I know that a lot of like blind alleys and choke points. Brawler mechs do very well in those kinds of situations. Whereas about taking place in a wide, large open plain, you can do a lot of damage, like your missile launching mechs, to hit the enemy and damage them. And damage them before they come up to you. So I'd say about approximately each scenario, not counting the optional battles, I would say each scenario has about 15 to 20 battles to go through it. During the course of the scenario. So, there's some good gameplay here. Graphics are typical for PlayStation games by the time period. You have the normal top quality square presentation with the opening, the opening closing FMVs,
which are rendered from computers and just recorded.
And there's certain scenes during the game also which are also rendered in quality. Those scenes still look very good today. But they the game, the graphics themselves and the itself of the game are just your typical PS1 graphical blocky images. I do like how there's how the game alternates between like far off and close up shots. If you have an enemy doing a missile attack, for example, we use a far off a range, wherever it's a camera angle, where it's a close attack, you'll get a close up of the two mechs actually brawling one another. So
I have to say, this game actually looks pretty good.
It looked amazing when it came out. It still looks nowadays. It looks a little bit dated, but not as bad as some of the PlayStation games.
I mean, it's like one of the first 3D consoles. So,
and this game was actually criticized when it came out because of its graphics. Believe it or not,
criticized well or
poorly.
Really?
Just to give an example, however,
I thought it looked pretty good.
Just to give an example, GameSpot, for example, in their review said that the game graphics were not as good as other Square games, as Final Fantasy Tactics.
Really? Who wrote that review?
I didn't actually read the article itself, so I can't tell you.
I wanna see who wrote that review.
But no, yeah. I always thought the graphics were pretty good, and like you said, the 3D aspect does work very well because the controls are pretty good in this game. You have quite a bit of freedom to move the camera around, and to be able to spin the battlefield around, look at different angles, just zoom in, zoom out. You can see the height of terrain around you, because obviously if you can, you want to attack from a higher elevation, because you can do more damage and see more of the battlefield that way, and whatnot. So, the graphics, again, the graphics may not be the prettiest, but they're still very good. It looks like they're very, very functional. So the game definitely does in that department. I like what it needs to. And the music, the soundtrack in this game is awesome. This is probably one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time, bar none. I would put this soundtrack like a top 10. It's that good.
I haven't really noticed the soundtrack. I think I'm more focused on the gameplay than the sound that's coming into my ear holes.
Well, it was a three-person effort, a three-person team at Square that made the soundtrack, and
I saw that, and
it really fits the whole theme of the game very well. Overall, the soundtrack of this game has a very metal/techno, hard rock driving beat to it. Okay. That kind of fits the futuristic setting that the game set in, and they did a wonderful job of evoking emotions and being able to match what's going on in the game. Like for example, if it's a story scene where somebody dies, it's a very tender, piano-based, slow-moving piece. If it's a like it's a battle, like we're ambushed, and you're trying to hold out for like five turns. It's a very hard rocking, heavy techno snare baseline beat to it that really gets blood pumping.
I have to ask, what happens if you're outside of your mech and your pilot dies? Does it change anything, or is it just like if your mech was destroyed with your pilot inside?
Pretty much the same thing.
Okay. So they just basically come back to life if you finish the battle.
Yes,
and they're
with
dead.
the exception of
Okay.
the main character, though, because because like if Kazuki dies, the playing time's game over.
Oh,
So-
really? Because when his mech gets destroyed, everything's fine.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you want to keep him alive as much as possible because you're basically
That's
Kazuki.
a very good tip. You want to keep your main character alive.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Usually go in the fall like in games, but this is really a very excellent CD-based soundtrack that I thought was very, very appropriate like for the game. Like certain games where the soundtrack doesn't really seem to fit the overall theme or pacing of the game like at all. Not this one. It really is a great appropriate soundtrack. I listen to this at work on a regular basis.
Oh, really?
But it really is. Square again at this time period really was cranking out some written music like the games, and this game is no exception. The music is definitely something that sticks with you. Well, stuck with me at least as much as the much as the gameplay does. And the stories and the story of the game is not half baked either. It's a very good story too. It's a very compelling, deep story where it doesn't really spoil anything. Like we're saying that regardless of what scenario that you pick, your main character is accused of doing. He's framed for something they didn't commit. And you have to go on the run, and certain people will help you depending upon which scenario that you go on, and you spend the game trying to basically clear your name and trying to
Kill all the people that are blaming you.
Yeah, and trying to, and you also find out there's a huge conspiracy going on between between your country and some other countries, and trying to get to the bottom of it.
Is it really surprising though that somebody came up with a conspiracy? Is it really that surprising?
Well, Front Mission 4 doesn't really focus upon the conspiracy angle very much. That one's more like of a soldier fortune bandit plot line.
I know, but I'm saying somebody creating a conspiracy about something big like that's not a surprise.
It's easy, like the least path of resistance, sure, but the writing of the game is still very good. It's still it's still a very good story.
What I've read so far is pretty good.
The main characters are fleshed out. There's definitely personality and quirks to each of them. There's that, for example, George mentioned one of the positive characters. Positive characters that you can get is this crazy old coot farmer / mech who operates an experimental methane operated Vanzer. So, and just another example, you can also run into a very shy, demure JDF policewoman who's in the wrong place at the wrong time and has to join you because Sebi's enemy thinks that she's involved with you just because she happened to be seen talking to you. But so she gets sucked into this thing regardless like where she wants to or not.
Boy.
So, and then you also have like you have your supervillain of the game who you end up fighting as the final boss. Regardless of which scenario that you go down, the ending does differ depending upon what happens. But and certain main characters can die during the game depending upon which scenario that you go down. So they're not afraid to pull punches as far as the story goes.
Right now, I just really like this game. Definitely will go back to it. I played a lot just today of this game, and I did not get bored of it. I did take a break here and there, though, just so, I don't know, probably so I don't get bored with it. But it was fun to just sit around and play this on my Vita. I didn't really play this on my HD TV. That would probably make it look worse, to be honest. Higher resolution like that. But I did notice some lag when there's like some of those little cutscenes going off when you're shooting the
that's
enemy.
typical.
But you know, it's like
that was typical
whatever.
for.
It's not like a shooter and it's
Right.
lagging or anything like that. That would be horrible.
Yeah, there's really not too many complaints I have with this game. The translation also of the game I thought was very good also.
I've seen a few problems, but
A
it's
few problems,
nothing major.
A few
That's
minor.
pretty good for a game like this. I mean, you
Yeah.
can look at Final Fantasy VII and spot a lot of things.
Because there's a lot of text in this game, especially if you go into the virtual internet. That alone,
especially the forums.
probably
yes.
has that alone probably
Yes.
probably has more text than what the characters say during the course of the game. I really don't have too many nitpicks about this game. Some of the sounds don't really sound all that good. The explosions are okay, but some of the fighting sounds or gun sounds sound a bit hollow, I think. The difficulty can ramp up. The difficulty does a pretty good job of ramping up as you go through the game, as long as you take the time to actually do the missions successfully and carefully purchase and upgrade your mechs. If you don't do that, you're gonna run into trouble. So you may have to do a little bit of grinding. I didn't have to, but if you don't know what you're doing or if you have some bad luck, you can run into problems trying to advance through certain battles, because certain battles are much more tougher than other battles as you go through the game. Loading time, of course, is slow, as is typical for any big PlayStation game like this time period. That's pretty much it as far as my nitpicks go. All in all, I thought this was a very well polished, well presented, very fun, very fun tactical role playing game. And anybody who likes this game is strongly encouraged to check out the other two games of the main series that come out in the States. Also, the remake of the original Front Mission, which on the DS, and also Front Mission 4, the direct sequel, which came out with the PS2.
And you know what? Even go for Front Mission Evolved. It's more action-based, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's a first-person shooter game, mostly.
No, it's not first-person. It's third-person.
Hold on a sec.
Actually, I haven't played in a while, so I don't remember. What is it, Greg?
We're both wrong. Third-person shooter.
Third-person. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a shooter, but you're not seeing it from
That's
but,
what I thought.
Yeah.
And there's actually also parts where you're not in the mech. You actually have to do some shooting.
Yes.
It's all right, I guess. I don't know. We're not talking about PlayStation 3 games.
Well, I do want to touch a little. Yeah. I did want to touch a little bit just upon the other two games, because there are some differences. Front Mission, as I said, originally came out like the Super Famicom, and the remake on the DS just has things like slightly enhanced graphics, better controls. It uses both screens. One screen shows the map. The other screen shows your status, which is nice. That game is more heavy tactic, light role playing game, compared to where Front Mission 3 is more equally balanced between the two. So the original Front Mission is more of a heavy tactical game. There's less story in it. It's still a good story. Like I said, all the stories in the main game do connect one another because they're all part of the same world. But that game is more but that game, you spend a lot more time on the battle side of things compared to the actual story shop side of things. So, and it's not as balanced as Front Mission 3 is. It's definitely a harder game. Still, it's a fun game. I played that came out obviously years after Front Mission 3 did. So it was kind of fun to go back to the series' roots and see how it started.
All right. Now, if you have anything else to say, do you?
Front Mission 4 was really different in the sense that they follow the same heavy role-playing aspect of the game from Mission 3. But that story I didn't care for as much. Some of the other gameplay choices that they made in that game, it just kind of made, I don't know, it was fun. It just wasn't as fun as it just wasn't, just wasn't as much fun. It just wasn't like as much fun as as fun as like Front Mission 3 was. That game is probably also available on the PSN. I haven't looked to confirm that, but
I have no idea. But now, what I like to do here, or what we like to do here, I guess, take a look at prices of the physical media and see how much they sold for on things like eBay and see if it's worth it. And, since this is a PSN release as well,
yes,
if you have a PlayStation 3 or a PSP or a Vita, you can also go get this. You can get this digitally, which is actually much cheaper. So this game is $5.99 on PSN. Most definitely worth it. You are not going to miss that $6. Now, for the physical media, I see listings here: $22.99, $24.99. What else do we have here? I'm seeing a lot of Front Mission Evolved here, which is much less. Somebody bought it for $44.99, $15, $8.50. So you can get an idea of how much this game is. I say it's most definitely worth like $25 or whatever still to this day.
Which I paid for it like back then. So,
right. Yeah. So look, the value did not depreciate. It just stayed the same.
I actually thought the game was going to be like more expensive because it wasn't a huge print run. This game only got like one print run and that was it. So I was expecting it to be a little bit more pricier. Those are pretty good prices actually, like all things considered.
Yeah, the 40s maybe a little too much, but it's really worth. If you can find it for 15, that's a really good price.
Of course,
if you can find it for 25, that's fine. I wouldn't pay that much.
Of course, the big problem with collecting games like Urk is the condition of the jewel cases, because those jewel cases are so easy to damage.
All these listings I've seen, the jewel cases are in like perfect condition, which is very surprising.
Plus, I think you can probably swap out the jewel cases.
You can. You can actually open up the jewel case and even take out the little cardboard inserts that you see in the background where the disc goes.
Right.
I actually used to do that as a kid.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. It's just it's definitely worth this price point. But if you do have one of those 3 platforms I listed before, most definitely get the digital version because it doesn't take up much space and it's a really good game. So for $6, at least for US dollars, that's just it's just an amazing price for this in-depth game.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody who enjoys like tactical games, like Final Fantasy Tactics, like or XCOM, like anybody who enjoys stomping around in giant mechs.
Yeah, it's like a futuristic Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. Even people who don't like Square as a rule, and there are folks out there who pretty much boycott like Square's products.
I don't know why people do that. Just don't rate a developer by itself. Just rate the games. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like
whatever.
anybody
Do what you want.
Yeah, anybody could have published this game and it'd still be like a great game. Because
look at Rockstar. Okay.
Yeah.
Rockstar put out some really good stuff, but they also put out what is the name of that game? It's the game that Bungie developed for them, and I can't think of it. It's not a great game for PS2. I can't remember it. Nope, not coming to mind. But it's there was a game that Rockstar published that was made by Bungie, and it was not good at all. You just don't, you just play the game and see what it's like. You don't just say like, oh well, unless it's like a company that's known for like doing something really, really bad,
right?
But I don't know. I mean, like I said, do what you want. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and that would all be like very, very worthwhile. Even the game only had one story, but the game actually has two stories because of that. Plot choice that happens right in
the first 5 minutes of the game.
So you actually so you almost get two games in one here because of this, and you get a good 40, 50 hours of gameplay easily out of this, going on both paths.
A very long time. So it's definitely worth the $6 if you spend that 50 hours.
Yeah. So.
Well, Greg, do you have anything else to say?
Just the fact that this is really one of the underrated classics, the classics of the PlayStation library. I think it's always been on my top 10 list of PlayStation games, and the soundtrack, like I said, the soundtrack alone has always been in my top 10 list of favorite soundtracks of all time.
Oh yeah.
So I'm really pleased this game's available now. It's available again on the PSN and can
it's been available for about 6 years.
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, the fact that it is on there and still on there today as of 2016, it's also very nice to see, because this game really is an underrated classic, I think.
Most definitely.
Just did not get a lot of attention when it came out, and certainly has a lot of fans today, myself included. And I hope I've been able to explain a little bit as to why why that I am such a big fan of this series, and of this one game in particular. Maybe not so much the series, but the series is pretty good too. But this game is the shining pinnacle of the series, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, thanks for listening, and contact stuff. I am on Twitter, and I started kind of tweeting a little bit more. Kind of. You can find me at Mr. Chief. It's at MISTURCHEEF. And you want to send us an email here. That is PlayStationPower@theboxfort.net. I believe that's the email. That's the email that I'm telling myself right now. Actually, I haven't checked it in a bit. I'm supposed to get that stuff forward. But, yes. PlayStationPower@theboxfort.net. The website is theboxfort.net, which is THEBOXFORT.net. I also do Master System Masterpieces, which is a podcast that goes game by game for the Sega Master System. You can email into that podcast, msm@theboxfort.net. And I also do another podcast that is not family friendly, but it's a VR podcast called VR Enclave. I don't think we have any contact info for that yet. But right now we're talking about the Gear VR. We put out our first episode somewhat recently. We talked about the games we played, and we talked about a movie we watched, which was Strange Days. And Greg, what stuff do you do?
Besides doing this podcast with you,
you do this podcast with me?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We also do another podcast together. You recently joined me on the Super NES podcast, a podcast I've been running for over a year now. And you can send me an email directly to my Yahoo account, which I use for that, which is the SNES podcast at yahoo.com.
How do you spell Yahoo?
YAHOO.com.
You thought you spelled it wrong again.
We also have a Facebook pages up for the Super NES podcast and PlayStation Power. So
and everything else that I said, I forgot about that.
So go check us out. and both those podcasts are a proud member of the Retro Junkies Network, and we very much appreciate their support. There are a lot of other great retro gaming podcasts on there, so go check them out.
Yeah, like Retro Obscure. I had to think. Is that bad?
Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast, the Atari 51 Super podcast, the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast, the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast.
Oh my god, are you going to list all of them?
The major ones, ColecoVision.
Oh boy.
ColecoVision. There's also the Intellivision podcast.
Intellivisionaries.
Yep. And
and all those other things.
Two Dudes in NES, like who covers the covers the NES, of course.
I was on there before.
Yep. So, do we want to say what game we're covering next time, George?
I forgot about the yes. I would like to hear what game you want to cover, because if you don't tell me now, I'm probably not going to know.
I picked this game.
Yeah.
Which means it's your turn.
No, it's not. It's
yes,
your turn to pick the PS2 game.
Yeah. I picked this. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
That's a PlayStation 1 game. What are you talking about? Oh, no. It's kicking in. The Alzheimer's kicking in.
PlayStation 2 game. Wow. We talked about doing a certain game in the past. Do you want to cover that one?
Sure. What game is it?
We're going to be looking at we're going to be doing a tie-in with this podcast and the other podcasts that both George and us do, that both George and myself do, the Super NES podcast. But looking at how one game's been covered on both systems. One of the best shooters of all time, Gradius 3, on the PS, on both the Super NES, like on the PS2. But on the PS2, it was also released. The PS2, it was also released. It was also released at the same time as Gradius 4. So it's actually Gradius 3 and 4 on the PS2, just to make life more confusing.
Yep.
So
Japanese stuff.
Some of the best shooters ever made. Those games are great. The Gradius series is one I have a lot of affection, a lot of history for. So.
All right. So that's it. Goodbye. We're kicking you out. We're taking the key away from you. We're changing the locks. You can't get through the doggy door. Goodbye.
Take care, all.
Don't tell them to take care. We just kicked them out. Bye.